Well, this is a very entertaining interview with Mark Gregson, who tells us right from the beginning that he's very creative, but he's stubborn, might be quite hard to work with on occasions. And he compares himself, he's a pirate. He doesn't want to be in the rigid discipline of the Navy. So he's left a well-paying job and he's taken this bold step to start his own business. It's a big risk for him. He tells us that he's got ADHD, that the time management issues that creates for him, along with a sense of imposter syndrome, that he puts a huge amount of stress on him, that he is constantly pressuring himself to be better, and he's never quite satisfied with how well he's doing, and he's always looking over his shoulder. So he's quite, but he manages it with a great sense of humor. He's passing through that, and the thing that's really kept him going, I think, through those moments of doubt is his very strong sense of values. And right at the end, he's very, very clear that you shouldn't compromise your values. Work out your own way, he says. Work out who you are. And then as the precursor to starting the business, be confident about that before you really go into the business planning. So all in all, I think you'll really enjoy this interview. Thanks very much. Welcome, everybody, to the next edition of Stressing Values podcast, the podcast that takes you into the minds of business leaders and how they manage their stress and how they use their values to drive their business forward and to set their targets. I'm delighted this afternoon to welcome Mark Gregson from Impact Working, who's set up a very interesting model of workspaces, and I'm going to let Mark tell you a lot more about that. So welcome to the podcast, Mark.
Thanks, Colin.
So yeah, as I said, this is your shot really to tell us about Impact Working. What does it do? How does it work?
Okay, so we've got 3 sites at the moment. The company only incorporated in August 2020, and we opened the doors to our first site down in Bristol. So we opened the doors to our first site instead of April 2021. So it's a relatively new business. I mean, it's an industry I've kind of spent my whole kind of career in, but this is my, first kind of go at trying to sell my own ship. So in terms of how I would describe us, I would say at the moment, I'm going to call this multi-site because we're in Reading, Bristol, and about to open in London. We're a multi-site operator of flexible workspaces, or should I say purpose-driven, amenity-rich co-working spaces. And what I mean by that, so we offer a range of products and memberships, private office suites from kind of two desks to let's say 100 desks, probably our biggest client at the moment.
Wow.
Co-working memberships, day passes, meeting room and event space to hire. Our spaces, they're all sort of fully serviced, so we've got a team on site, so they will look after everything from the facility, utilities, cleaning, hosted events on site, refreshments.
Okay.
So it's kind of very much sort of plug and play. In terms of our client base and kind of typical businesses we work with, I think probably the one common theme, and you kind of touched on it before, is that a lot of our occupiers tend to be very values led, and hopefully, I mean, if I look at some of our Google reviews, hopefully we align well with them on our values. But in terms of the types of businesses, it's a bit of a mix really from location to location. So Bristol's very media, kind of tech friendly, a lot of young sort of fresh startups and scale ups.
Yes.
With a bit of a tech focus. Reading is slightly more professional services. A few more household names like the Santander, Zurich Insurance, Ernst & Young, those types of businesses.
Oh, okay.
And London watch this space because we're due to open there on the 6th of July. So
wow,
I can't quite tell you who's gonna like that one, but I think we're close to Old Street Roundabout, so you think probably have a slight tech bias, or certainly kind of fintech bias, bear in mind proximity to the city. But we'll have to watch the space on this one.
Wow, how interesting. So how on earth did you get into this?
Absolutely by mistake. Absolutely by mistake.
The best business plan.
Yeah, do you know, and they say kind of, if I take it to the beginning, so how I got into the industry was by mistake. I was, I studied art, particularly kind of found myself in illustration, had no clue what I wanted to do post uni. Okay. And like a lot of people, I kind of fell into a sales job, and that sales job was in recruitment. I kind of did kind of IT recruitment for about 6 months, but then moved across to property recruitment. And the serviced office industry at the time was kind of really taking off in the UK. A lot of providers that don't exist now, NWB, MLS, Regis is one that does exist, Avanta no longer exists. Right. And the first big account that I won was the Regis account. And I kind of spent a couple of years kind of putting staff into the Regis account. They were kind of expanding quite heavily globally. And I kind of had like a bit of an epiphany moment. I was living in Manchester at the time, and yes, I kind of got quite sort of friendly with some of the directors at Regis, and one of them suggested that I could come and work for them. And in true not thought through style, I packed up my possessions in a B-Reg Fiesta, and I kind of phoned my grandparents and asked if they mind if I slept on the sofa for 3 months, because I actually moved from Manchester to West London. Right. And the first building that Regis gave me was Chiswick Park. So it was more, yeah, it was blind luck. It was a mistake. It certainly wasn't kind of by design, but that's how I ended up in the industry in 2004, 2005. Right. If you're to ask me about how I ended up in the kind of sort of with impact working. Yes, that is my next question. Well, do you know what, my previous role was with, and was with quite a big operator, a company called Labs, and the chap that owns Labs is the guy that bought kind of Camden Market, so they're very dominant across Camden and Holborn. Yeah. And I was working there as a capacity as a sales director. I left that business. It was kind of some good times. It was kind of great to kind of get the business off the ground, but there's some sort of tricky times as well. And when I left Labs, something that was going to stuck with me, and my now business partner, sort of Robert Whitten, when I was a sales guy for a business called Landmark 12 years ago, I rented them their first office at Canary Wharf, and it was on the 32nd floor, and it had nice views of the water, and it was a corner pot, you know, it was a nice office. And Robert and another chap there, Mark Felton, had always kind of mentioned, they said that if I ever fancy starting up a kind of co-working company, because they were an asset management business, so they own property, there's some residential, some commercial. The one element of kind of commercial which they weren't into at the time was kind of co-working, but obviously it was an industry that was expanding. And they sort of said to me, if I fancy kind of setting up my own kind of co-working business, then to pick up the phone. And you know, we had a conversation. It was now the start of COVID, which, you know, when Boris are telling people to work from home, it's quite difficult. Yes. Your job is based around.
What I was going to say that earlier, yes.
Selling desks, and you know, we kind of took the downtime, if you like, during kind of COVID to shop the local market. You know, kind of pull together a business plan. The idea was always to launch the first one in Bristol, because the Impact Capital Group actually owned the building that I'm sort of sat in now in Bristol, and they had a floor there that had been kind of vacant for a couple of years, so it seemed like a good place to like pilot the program. So I kind of spent 6 months pulling together the business plan, and I could have presented it there to the team of investors, and we pretty much kind of incorporated straight away, and that was it. We were very much off. So again, there was no grand designs to leave Labs to sort of set up a business or set up a partnership with anyone else at all. I think I'd kind of reached that sort of stage in my life. I was kind of probably around 40 at the time, and probably by my own ambition can be kind of difficult to manage at times. You know, I can be quite sort of pig-headed, and I like to be creative, and I can be sort of stubborn, and you know, okay. I like the idea of, I'm very much into the journey rather than the destination. Okay. Interesting. I think kind of another way I could describe it, and I think you've kind of probably heard before, I'd rather be a pirate than in the Navy, whereas in the Navy, I think you wake up in the morning, you're told what to do. You know what you're going to do. I like the idea of waking up in the morning and kind of like, you know, choosing how my day looks, yes. You know, in terms of what we do. You know, I'm kind of thankful.
Interestingly, I'm picking up those two stories that you tell about how you started with Regis and then how you started this seem to be based on real relationships of trust with people you've got to know.
Yeah,
is that how you see it?
Yeah, I'd kind of agree with that. It's I think probably there's been times when I've suffered a little bit from imposter syndrome, sort of amongst other things.
Okay.
You know, and it was nice to have people that I perhaps looked up to and had achieved things that I was kind of hoping to achieve in my career, you know, put a big vote of confidence in me. And I think kind of for me personally, I think that, you know, if I can work for someone in the past, I need to know, I mean, it's maybe like it's like a self-validation thing. I need to know that I'm doing the right thing and I'm doing, you know, a decent job. And, you know, I suppose that my talent, however like much or sort of little there is, you know, it's kind of been noticed, you know, and I'm kind of like performing like within, you know, within my potential. I think a lot of my school reports, I was the kind of classic, has all the potential in the world, sometimes lacks application. So I'm one of those, I think. And I think if I'd have kind of gone through life and found that my school report, let's say my adult report of life had read the same way, as in, you know, it kind of consisted of unfulfilled potential. I'd have looked back and I wouldn't have been sort of particularly happy with myself. So I think, you know, for me to kind of have those people could give me a vote of confidence and kind of give me, you know, a platform to do what I do. I'm certainly going to be thankful for it, and trust was a big element of that.
Yeah, it must be. They must have been impressed by what you did with them to ask, you know, to offer you a job or even a partnership. That's extraordinary. You know, 12 years on. So...
I still don't see it myself.
Don't worry about it. This is what the others see. Yes. So you started. You're just about to open up the third office in London in July, as you say. How do you see it over the next 5 years?
Do you know what? I kind of have kind of a goal in my head, and as I alluded to before, I'm very much a fan of the you know, the journey rather than the destination. I think as a business kind of collectively over the next 5 years, I think we'd like to take the business to 2 or 3 more cities. I would like to certainly kind of hit sort of 10 locations. I think would be the goal for me kind of you know, personally within sort of 10 years, sorry, within 5 years. And I would expect kind of half that growth to probably come from London and half from regional cities. So perhaps with 5 sites in London, we already have Reading and Bristol outside, but as a northwest lad, I'd perhaps like to put Manchester on the map.
I was going to say Manchester.
It'd be nice to open one in Birmingham, you know, so perhaps Manchester, Birmingham, Leeds, Manchester, Birmingham, Edinburgh, something like that to create a bit more national coverage. I think, you know, would be good. I think, well, you know, as a business, I know you kind of touched on values. You know, we're very, you know, the business is very much kind of positioned as a kind of force for good. You know, and what I mean by that, I very much consider myself a romantic capitalist. I like the idea of us kind of deploying capital to leave the world a better place than we found it. Whether that be people, whether that be environment, you know. So our goal is not only profit. I mean, if there's any return on capital, I mean, we kind of need that to kind of keep our shareholders happy.
Absolutely, yes.
But I think.
So give us an example of how you create the impact in impact working then.
How long have you got? Do you know what?
You're quite succinct.
I mean, I'm thankful of the fact, you know, we've kind of got, you know, we've kind of put together a great team of people, sort of first and foremost. And I think I remember kind of putting about a post out last Christmas on LinkedIn, and it wasn't so much about waxing lyrical about the numbers and our annual performance. It was actually the really kind of human elements of what we achieved sort of throughout the year. You know, I think out of our team, I think kind of 4 secured promotions. 1 was able to kind of buy their first house. 1 of them's kind of got engaged for the first time. We planted 6,500 trees. Really? We got involved with some community projects. You know, the majority of our suppliers are B Corp, so you know, so they have kind of a positive impact on the environment. You know, we spent time volunteering at Euston Food Bank as a team. You know, there's been like various kind of initiatives we've kind of done as a business, and that, dare I say, is, I mean, that's the bit that warms my heart. That's the bit that kind of motivates me.
Right.
And I think I can't remember who it was, but I think some famous guy. There's two types of people in the world: those that are into people and those that are into stuff. And I'm firmly in the first camp.
In the people side, yes.
Yeah. So the S in ESG, is certainly kind of the most important to me sort of personally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously the environment's a very important kind of part of the business. But for me, making good supply chain choices, having proper waste management and recycling, they should really be the basics. Not not giant leaps forward. But in terms of social governance, in terms of having teams, having kind of people who are kind of going through crazy inflation numbers, cost of living crisis and everything else, supporting our team. To navigate what's been a pretty tricky few years, hasn't it, for a lot of people. I think that kind of that's certainly sort of something which kind of motivates me quite a lot.
Interesting. So if I hold that, you've got very strong values, particularly around people. You want your sites to be really well managed environmentally. What do you think you're going to need to do if you want to expand this from 2 and 1 coming to 10 in 5 years? What do you think you're going to need to develop to
I definitely need a number 2.
Okay.
Applications welcome. We definitely have to build out our HQ team, because our HQ team's got a really sort of skinny at the moment. So I definitely need some support there. I'm certainly not kidding myself. I can do it all on my own. We're actually in the process in the moment of actually kind of rolling out various playbooks across the business. So systems playbook, community playbook, environmental playbook, values playbook, which are kind of replicable standards, therefore that we can kind of use when onboarding the staff at each individual location, to make sure there's a kind of consistent experience. If we care about the trees, then it's very different. We can't kind of force our staff to care about the same things, but I think recruitment will be really key for us.
Yes.
I mean, we are really lucky at the moment that we're still a relatively sort of small team, but every single member of our staff lives and breathes our company values. They could all recite the vision statement, the mission statement, our values, why it's important. It aligns with their personal beliefs, and it also could aligns kind of well with what our clients are looking for. And so recruitment is going to be key, because I think what we kind of do for it, in terms of an industry, is it's quite easy to teach people. If we hired a community associate, give me 3 months, I can teach them everything that they need to know. In terms of what they care about and their personal agenda, that's something and perhaps their attitude, to life and positivity and our clients and everything else. That's something that you can't teach. So I think they've
got it or they haven't. Yeah.
I think recruiting the right people is going to be absolutely kind of key, because I don't want to dilute the brand. I don't want to move away from our values. I'd rather stay at 3 buildings and not dilute our values, quite frankly. That's why we're probably not necessarily going to seek sort of external investment, because what we don't want is a new sort of shareholder or stakeholder coming in, where perhaps as part of their equity strategy, this thing or that thing's particularly important to them, and they're asking us to change these ethos of the business,
jettison
to align with their investment strategy. And I think for us, stubbornly, I want us to stick to our guns, stay true to what we believe in, stay authentic. So I think that does that answer the question? I feel like
it really does. Yeah. No, and those values are sort of shining through to the point that actually you would sacrifice growth if you couldn't find the right finance package. Yeah, absolutely. That's very interesting. Can you put a bit of flesh on those capital S social values? When you said you were talking about obviously we've just gone through high inflation. How were you able to help your staff through this quite uncertain period we've gone through? We've kind of brought in little things where we can. We've kind of totally overhauled our company benefits packages. So now they have sort of additional leave, they have private medical cover, they have a social budget they can kind of spend per building per quarter to enjoy some time with each other. But then we've also kind of done things that say, for example, where
not non-building based staff, and I mean kind of the client-based staff, were very kind of flexible on where they work from.
Okay.
People are not stood in front of clients all the time. So, and they were people that traditionally, perhaps a few years ago, would have been 9 to 5, would have been in the office.
Yes.
So we've been able to support flexible working quite heavily. So we've kind of, we've kind of helped them sort of eliminate kind of cost to travel.
Yeah.
We also, we kind of made it a thing as a business. So those are kind of generally kind of office based. If they want to kind of turn up at the office at 10:30 every day and live a little bit later, that's also fine. So they're now off peak in terms of trains. So you kind of probably know where I live. So train ticket from Sevenoaks into London, is £40 a day peak.
Yeah,
£20
peak
a day
time,
off
yeah.
peak. So if you save £20 a day, that's hopefully
That's
it's a small contribution. We had an okay year last year in terms of financial performance, but we were able to give a pay rise to everyone across the group as well. It's going to help them through kind of cost of living, and that was actually funded through investment rather than kind of profits as well. So we kind of rolled the dice from that point of view, and whereas a lot of businesses are like, we're making profit, there's some money in the pot, great, cool, we can kind of give you a bit of a share. But we found a way to do it, because we kind of just saw that, people, certainly perhaps for some of the more junior staff who are, kind of towards the bottom of their kind of salary ranges, it's tough. It's tough, especially for young people. I mean, I don't have a clue how people without support from parents, so, first time buyers and stuff like that. And it's really difficult, isn't it? So we are we perfect? No. Did we do probably more than we could reasonably be expected to do for a smallish company that profitability was sort of a little bit up and down last year. I think we hand on heart can say we kind of did our best to make our staff's lives as comfortable as we could reasonably afford.
Yeah, brilliant. You said right at the beginning, you said you like to be creative and you like the journey. It sounds like you work quite long hours. Would that be right? Yeah, that's kind of fair to say. I know my team say I probably work quite an abnormal pattern. My circadian rhythm's probably around the other way, and I do fair to say I probably sort of suffer with ADHD. Is that right?
I tend to kind of be creative at different times of the day to other people.
Okay.
In the morning, by my own hat, my brain doesn't kick into gear until about 10:30 in the morning, by my own admission, after a few sort of stiff coffees. When people are winding down or having dinner and thinking about binge watching Netflix and going to bed at 7-8 o'clock in the evening, starting to wind down, for some reason I kind of come alive. It's not unusual for me to wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning after having lied in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about particular projects, and now I can't. I will not be able to sleep until it's out of my head. And I've been known to wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and write a 30-page PowerPoint presentation that I've kind of delivered to the team the next day. It's
my word. Yes.
I have a need for constant stimulation. I really kind of struggle to switch off. So don't get me wrong. I can't honestly say that that our shareholders, my business partner, I'm lucky I don't have anyone kind of cracking the whip over me.
No.
However, I tend to kind of have like a tendency to hyper focus on sort of certain things, and if it's a project which I find interesting or something I think will be really beneficial to the business, I'll obsess about it until it's done, until it's kind of implemented, and I think from that point of view, my brain kind of tends to control me rather than I control my brain. So if my brain says, "Great, we're going to go and do this project tonight. There's something interesting here. Let's put it down on paper. Let's get stuck in."
That's what we're going to do.
My body just has to go with it. That's what we do. And I can't switch off until it's going to happen. So that's a little insight into my psyche.
Whoa, I mean, I can relate to that. It would be much more diluted version of that, but I can kind of get that. But I know from experience that while I was doing those, concentrating intensely on this individual thing, the rest of the business was potentially getting neglected.
Yeah.
So how do you manage that challenge?
So it's a really good question, that one. I know by my own admission, I probably need to get slightly better at delegating.
Okay.
Also being effective, kind of a management team of one, sort of effectively kind of really with like, you know, middle management and then sort of building level management underneath me, is we're not kind of quite big enough to have like a head of ESG, you know, a head of marketing, you know, these types of departments.
You're not quite at that scale, are you?
I've kind of spent really personally like most of the last 10 years as a sales director. So I'm very much by my own admission. I'm a sales director masquerading or pretending to be sort of a CEO, and I've been learning on the job. I've had to kind of become, you know, the ESG expert. I've had to take an active interest in tech and marketing because we just don't have the departments or resources to kind of delegate that to the business, you know. So it's a case of if I don't do it, perhaps it wouldn't necessarily kind of get done as a business, and doesn't get done as a business, well then you kind of stagnate, you know, and then there's also
but that's going to have to change quite soon, isn't it?
It is, certainly, you know, as we kind of scale.
Yeah.
By my own admission, I probably would need to get I would need to get better at delegating. I would need to kind of a bit more operational structure around the business. We can't all be like have a go Harry's, just kind of doing a bunch of good stuff, and hopefully it all comes together into something which is of value and is, you know, is liked by our occupiers. You know, we'll have to kind of add a little bit more sort of definition to departments. But at the moment, you know, we're flying by the seat of our pants, you know, and we're a team of pirates. We're certainly we're not a Royal Navy frigate or destroyer. You know, we're a bunch of very good people with some good industry experience that all happen to be very socially intelligent, very connected with our clients, doing our very best on limited resources. So
yeah. So do you think that as you expand, you're going to have to become more naval and less pirate?
So I think that we kind of can't remain kind of cavalier forever. And I think certainly if we wanted to, you know, scale the business and kind of replicate from site to site, kind of move from that startup to scale up phase, you know, there has to be a bit more, you know, organizational discipline, a bit more operational efficiency kind of around the group. You know, whether we have a natural instinct to fight that or not, you know, is kind of another thing. But you're absolutely right. I think it's as I say, I think we've kind of just kind of completed our toddler years. We're kind of probably now about to go through our awkward teenage years. But there will kind of come a point in the next, you know, in the next kind of 2 or 3 years when we're going to have to be, you know, we have to be wearing our big boy pants, and, you know, there is going to need to be that bit of structure, and, you know, it can still be kind of like a fun place. You know, there is still kind of scope for, you know, still kind of scope for creativity.
Yes,
perhaps
absolutely.
we've just got a slightly less kind of cavalier attitude to how we kind of get there and kind of how we achieve the results.
Yeah, interesting. That's going to be quite a migration. So with all of this, we must do quite a lot of traveling in between these sites, and you're always looking for the next new idea. Does that bring with it, or what levels of stress would that bring with it for you?
Huge levels of stress. And stress is something that stress is something that I do openly admit that I sort of struggle to kind of cope with. I don't, probably interestingly, if I look at it objectively, I don't get a huge amount of you know, kind of pressure from within my peer group. I think a lot of the pressure is self-inflicted.
Yes.
I'm my own kind of harshest kind of critic, and also I have like an I think kind of fear of failure as well, which kind of drives me to kind of push harder and harder and harder and harder and harder. And, you know,
that imposter syndrome you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, and there's 1 or 2 people that have kind of even sort of suggested that I'm probably kind of prime candidate, you know, for burnout into the 10 years time, because there is no off switch. And I think I have got better at it, but I think I've got to get better at how I sort of manage stress. I've recently joined like a nice little health club kind of locally, so it's like I try and kind of get there, you know, for a swim in a steam room 3 times a week, and I try and dedicate my weekends to my children. You know, laptop goes off and phone goes off, and it tends to be the zoo or a walk or the farm or the swim park, absolutely. Or, you know, a museum. So we're very kind of active. They are my children are very much my sanity check.
Yeah,
and you know, they're also that kind of like, you know, I kind of get that, you know, a nice little kind of dopamine kick. I get a lot of joy from spending time with my children, and you know, they kind of keep you grounded, and ultimately, they're also a big reason, you know, why I do this, why I'm prepared to put myself through levels of stress.
Yeah, that's what it boils
Dare
down
to
to,
sort of
isn't it?
start up a business, because you know, if I didn't want stress, I'd have continued doing what I was doing. I was, you know, I was relatively well paid as a sales director.
Yeah.
I had a number to hit every month. My day finished at 6 o'clock every day. I just had to do exactly what was on the script sheet. You know, there wasn't outside of that. You know, I didn't
That's
need to
right.
be the creative one or the one inventing things or the one, you know, kind of trying my best to, like, you know, revolutionize the wheel or anything like that at all. It was, you know, life was a lot simpler.
Yeah.
I'm constantly where I chose this life.
You
know,
did. You
I'm
consciously
exactly
took
where
up the opportunity, didn't you? Yeah.
I've always sort of said that everyone, or you know, is generally kind of exactly where they should be at any moment in time, because you've arrived here on the basis of decisions that you've made,
A number,
choices you've
exactly.
made, how you've
Yeah.
applied it. You know, so
Yeah, that's great. I
um,
love that. I think that's very true. When you
yeah.
look
So
back over the last 2020, so 4 years,
yeah.
what are the 2 or 3 things that you've learned about running, you know, being in charge, that you'd like to sort of pass on to somebody else, possibly following in your footsteps?
It's hard. It's really hard. It's not glamorous. It's very lonely. It's very
Yeah.
lonely when you start as well. You know, I was kind of part of a big team at my previous employer. We're all kind of roughly at the sort of same level. You know,
Yes.
I had a lot of friends. You know, we go for lunch every day. We go for a beer
Yeah.
after work, and you know, you got the constant camaraderie. But those days when everyone's looking to you to lead or make a decision, sometimes a very big or difficult decision, or you know, or kind of come up with that next idea that kind of keeps us kind of constantly innovating.
Yep.
You know, the buck stops with you, and it's you know, and it can be, you know, I'm supported by a great team. Don't get me wrong; they're all very good at what they do. I wouldn't change any of them. It's you know, it's lonely having to be that guy, to be the tough guy. The guys, you know, you're supposed to be infallible. You're supposed to be bulletproof. You know, you're supposed to stick your chest out, and it's hard and it's lonely. But you know, the other bit of advice I could give people is work out who you are. Work out who you are and what's important to you before you start a business. You know, and I'd say that is almost kind of more important, or a precursor to work out what's the problem you're trying to solve, what can I monetize. Work out who you are. What do you believe in? What's important to you? You know, what are your values? And don't ever compromise on your values for anyone, for money, for shareholders, you know, for employers. Don't compromise on your values, because there's a place for everyone. You will find your home. You will find your home.
I love that. I think that's a fantastic place to close out on, Mark. That, I think a lot of people will resonate strongly with that. Thank you for coming on Stressing Values.
My pleasure.